The Sickness of Earth Society, Part 2. Arrogance. I welcome you, and thank you for stopping to listen. This is the second part of a series of videos talking about some of the many pathologies in which the Earth is immersed. If you want to listen to the first part first, I leave a little grey box on the screen above that will take you to it. In that video, we talked about the tendency to mistreat or marginalize those who think or feel differently, especially if they are more open or innocent than usual, or if they dare to question any of the schemes that establish the foundations of the self-sustaining reality of the 3D matrix. This time, I will talk about another of the problems in the 3D Earth mindset, which hinder, delay, slow down, or limit all personal and spiritual development and progress towards the true knowledge of the reality they wish to know. As some of my companions have mentioned before, earthly science is brutally limited. In most cases, it is simply limited by a reductionist and materialistic mindset, meaning that everything could be deciphered or explained by the sum of its parts, and always within a material framework, visible and palpable through the most basic physical senses. And in many other cases, they directly share knowledge completely backwards, completely turned upside down, or even attempting to prove completely false arguments with no logical and truly scientific basis, through studies painstakingly conducted to reach a particular conclusion, and then promoted to the population through campaigns of varying levels of aggressiveness, depending on how deeply rooted they want that belief to be in the population. All in the interest of those who run terrestrial society to control the perception and attention of a particular core of it, or the general mass of it. And in a world dominated by insecurity, the apparent need to step on others to keep one's footing, and the general denial of those things that break the comfortable reality that puts them in a position of apparent superiority over others, there is a tendency to ignore, punish, and ridicule any intention to explore new avenues, to open new doors, and to study new realms that escape from what is currently known by official or promoted earth science. Because, after so many years of studying and learning to the letter what they have so far discovered with much effort, they are overcome by pride that does not allow them to accept that, perhaps and only perhaps, not only do they not know everything, but that someone without all those studies could come along and put some questions on the table that would embarrass a person with a degree. But the problem would not be so serious if it stopped there. And the fact is that, like practically everything else there, the information is compartmentalized at different levels. But there is something much worse than that, and that is that the belief that this information is true and complete is also compartmentalized. In this way, the controller inserts and guides a certain way of thinking in his pupil, who is also taught that there are certain things that only they know among themselves. They will teach the next lower step a more limited and guided version of that knowledge, until they reach the general population who will believe themselves to be widely informed and extremely educated, after searching for and finding the information that reaches them, to the point of falling into arrogance when it comes to discussing these learned topics, generating in the most insecure ones pride and arrogance that will create a great inability to learn, or even to question new concepts that can replace those previously learnt, with the purpose of really understanding the reality in which they live, and not so much to simply be right, which for them is nothing more than a position of superiority over others. Often the weak learn to pretend to be the strong and wise. But it is only a disguise, or having learned to emulate being a certain way. When that mask is compromised, arrogance appears, with which they punish the person who tried to question something in a friendly and respectful way in order to learn and discover. And the worst thing is that, because of this aggressiveness, this ends up causing the person who questions certain things to stop doing so, at least in public, thus creating a perfect censorship added to the one that the controllers already exercise in a direct and literal way, which keeps humanity trained not to go off the rails. But you must not fall into thinking what they want you to think, which is that you are stupid, ignorant, or immature, because that is precisely what they seek to achieve, so that they can remain in a position of superiority or authority, which in reality is an artificial superiority because it is not based on real, unrestrained study of the reality around them and their own conclusions. It is based on repeating what they have learnt. That's all it is. To me, that's far more stupid than asking questions and trying to find answers. Yes, of course. We are all very ignorant in some aspect of life, for there are countless of them. But does that add or detract from anything about you? If you ask questions, it is precisely because you want to know. If you memorize without questioning, it is only because you need to make yourself look like you know, whether it is to get a degree, a job, or a social position over someone. If you ask me, I feel it is rather arrogant, and with all due respect, even absurd, to think that only those things exist that you can perceive with your human senses. Many kinds of animals possess qualities, characteristics, or senses that allow them to perceive things that humans do not. And you don't have to leave your own planet to find those animals. They are there, with you. Therefore, and according to my own reasoning and my own judgment, I would say that it is quite logical to think that there are at least several levels of the world around you, and that you perceive one range and other beings perceive another range. Higher, lower, similar, or totally different. I don't know, am I crazy? I'm sure you've heard it said before, the reason you see all those stars shining in the night sky, the reason they exist there, is because there's life in them. There is consciousness in them. In the same way, I say to you, if those realms or levels of perception exist, it is because there is something in them. Otherwise, there would be nothing to perceive. There would not be these different ranges of perception. You don't have to be extraterrestrial, you don't even have to be a genius, to realize that the universe follows an order. It follows a pattern. Things do not exist just because they do, or by chance. Everything has a reason, or many reasons, which are interconnected in a harmonious and perfect way to give rise to the existence of something else, which in turn exists in concordance and with full coherence with everything else. If there are beings capable of perceiving other levels to which you do not have access, it is precisely because life also exists on those levels. And that life also exists by perceiving a certain range, in which you may or may not be included. With its own rules, its own beliefs, and even its own science, in which you can be included. Or not. Never stop asking questions, even about things you think you already know. Don't let the aggressive judgment of someone who claims to know with certainty rob you of your self-confidence. Listen to them, and judge by, and for, yourself what works for you in their argument, because they may be right on one point or another. And finally, offer your experience and what you have come to discover, or what you have learned and are still unclear about, by expressing it in this way. But never, never impose it. What's in it for you? Do you care so much about being right, or would you rather know the truth? This is just my advice. Best regards. Za'el of Error.